getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and welcome to WION World is One. You're watching Gravitas with me, Hem Kaur Saroya. Let's get started. We told you about the day one items on the agenda for Trump. Today we delve deeper and tell you about Trump's wish list, or should we say hit list. Stay tuned for that report. Also on the show, we will get you the story of a 3-year-old chess prodigy from India. Stay tuned to know more about Anish Sarar. Indian Navy, it's poised to test a long-range anti-ship ballistic missile. And with this latest addition to its arsenal, India is aiming to achieve a strategic edge. What that is exactly, you will have to wait and find out. Iran and Saudi Arabia, the two arch rivals, are now looking for ways to enhance defense and military cooperation. Stay tuned for that report as well. Our top story is about Trump's hit list. Number 1 on his hit list is Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Number 2 is Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And EU? Well, that's on Trump's twist list. Here's what I mean. Trump's election victory, it's put both Ukraine and Canada under the spotlight. While Ukraine's reliance on American support to defend against Russia could face unexpected strain under Trump, Canada could be drawn into renewed trade tensions and defense disputes under Trump 2.0. Meanwhile, Europe watches closely as Trump's foreign policy promises a new twist in America's relations with the world. What are these twists? Let's do a deep dive. Let's start with Ukraine. While Zelensky praised Trump's impressive win on election night, there's skepticism over whether Trump will extend the same generosity as far as military assistance to Ukraine is concerned. Trump has repeatedly promised that he can end the war in Ukraine. He's gone as far as promising to end the war within a day. But there's little clarity on what that would mean for Kyiv, and the implications are heavy. Would the new Trump administration pressure Zelensky to accept a quick but costly deal with Russia? Experts say it's quite possible. They say the new Trump-led White House might withhold military support to push Ukraine towards making concessions. And to that, the fact that Zelensky and Trump have had a difficult history and the anxieties only increase. You see, back in 2019, a controversial phone call between the two sparked impeachment proceedings against Trump. In it, Trump allegedly pressured Zelensky to investigate his political rivals by withholding aid. Although they appeared cordial in a meeting later that year, Trump has since blamed Zelensky and outgoing President Joe Biden for the war in Ukraine. That's without mentioning Putin. This is why some analysts say that Trump's return could bring setbacks to Ukraine's fight against Russia. As far as Russia is concerned, a Trump victory could be seen as a potential opening for Russia to press its advantage, especially if US military support to Ukraine wanes. Trump's apparent desire for a rapid deal could make the situation even more precarious for Kyiv. As the war situation in Ukraine grows more intense, President Volodymyr Zelensky is said to be worried. Reports suggest that he fears that when Trump will take charge in January, the steady stream of US weapons and financial aid might stop, leaving Ukraine vulnerable against Russian forces. Remember, we're now looking at a very different America, a Trump America that may not be willing to provide the same support that Ukraine has received under Biden. For Zelensky, that raises the stakes. Could this be the end of the gravy train of US weapons and money? Meanwhile, outgoing President Joe Biden is rushing to send arms to Ukraine as if he's bracing for a drastic policy shift. What does that say about America's support for Ukraine? Does Biden expect Trump to cut back on aid when he takes the chair? Could it be Biden's last-ditch effort to shore up Ukraine's defenses? Does he anticipate that Trump may cut back on American aid? All signs point to it. As far as Europe is considered, its leaders are worried. After all, Trump has made some bold declarations. Trump's ambition to end the Ukraine war could become his defining foreign policy move. Trump has suggested that he will speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In fact, on Sunday, a Washington Post report did say that a call had already taken place between the US President-elect and Russian President. But by afternoon on Monday, the Kremlin denied this report, calling it completely false and fiction. Kremlin said that no such communication had taken place between Trump and Putin, raising several questions on the table. Earlier, I spoke with Russian affairs analyst Fred Weir on what this means. Listen to this.
I think there are a lot of red flags in this story, and the biggest one is the nature of the Kremlin denial. It's absolutely airtight and categorical. You know, often in these matters, two sides will dispute what was said or when or some other details. In this case, the Kremlin spokesman said, it never happened. It's pure fiction. Now, that's extremely unusual because there's no reason why Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, shouldn't call up Putin to talk about things. And Putin has said he congratulated Trump on his victory and said that he's ready to talk. So there's nothing wrong with the idea of them having a conversation. So I think we're probably dealing with some misinformation.
Now, we don't know if a call did take place between the two, but even if Trump and Putin discuss a peace deal and it happens without Ukraine's involvement, what will that mean for Ukraine's future? Remember, Trump has in fact suggested that he will speak with Putin. He's also repeatedly vowed to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. It sounds decisive, but here's the question. Does this plan serve American interests or Ukrainian interests, or could it in fact play directly into Russia's hands? Remember, Trump won't be inaugurated until January. He would still need to assemble his cabinet, which in itself is a complex task. Will Putin or Zelensky even be ready to negotiate peace by then? It's too soon to say. Let's turn our attention to Canada now. Trump's return to power could mean a tough road ahead for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Remember, Trump's policies disrupted US-Canada relations in the past, challenging long-standing alliances and trade partnerships. Now, as Trump reasserts his America First ideology, Canada's economic reliance on the United States makes it especially vulnerable. According to reports, Canada sends about 75% of its exports to the United States. And Trump's proposed 10% tariff on imports that's already raised alarms in Ottawa. After Trump's victory, Trudeau congratulated Trump, calling for a strong friendship between the two countries. But privately, Trudeau's administration is reportedly preparing for what could be an even more challenging period than before. According to analysts, Canada may face trade wars, demands for increased defense spending, and cross-border issues that could stress its economy. Also, let's not forget that Trump has previously criticized Trudeau. He's called Trudeau a far-left lunatic and two-faced. Trudeau also appeared to mock Trump during a meeting of NATO leaders in 2019. For now, officials from Trudeau's party are reportedly treading carefully, wary of any statements that might provoke Trump and complicate ties further. But beyond economics, a new Trump administration could put Canada's defense strategy under scrutiny as well. As a NATO member, Canada might be pressured to increase military spending, shifting focus from domestic priorities. We've spoken about this. Experts warn that if Trump's isolationist approach strengthens, Trudeau government could be caught between competing global powers. What's more, Trump's proposed mass deportations of undocumented immigrants could also have consequences, driving more migrants towards Canada and straining its housing and social services. Former Immigration Minister Jason Kenney has already warned of a potential crisis that could test Canada's refugee policies. Evidently, the coming months will test Trudeau. Behind the scenes, Trudeau is facing an uphill battle politically. Polls suggest he will lose to a conservative challenger, that's Pierre Poilievre, in an election set for within the next year. Plus, there is domestic issue of economic challenges, diplomatic rows. I'm talking about Canada's rows with China and India. All these issues together mean that any disruptions from US policy will only magnify the issues Trudeau faces at home. Ultimately, as Trump prepares to assume power, the stakes grow for these leaders. Will Trump's America First agenda leave allies with fewer options, or will it lead them into making unprecedented concessions? For Zelensky and Trudeau, the clock is ticking on decisions that could reshape the course of their country's futures. Who will come out on top in Trump's New World Order, and who will find themselves on the receiving end of his hit list? Only time will tell. And that being said, President-elect Donald Trump recently announced that Tom Homan, his former acting U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director, or ICE, will be in charge of mass deportations pledged by Trump during his campaign. Homan will be Trump's border czar, as it were. Who is Homan, and how does he plan to deport the millions of illegals in the United States? That's the big question. You see, even as the exact number of people who could face deportation remains unknown, statistics offered by the Center for American Progress, it puts the number of undocumented immigrant population in the United States at around 11.3 million. Around 7 million of them are working people. That's how many people Trump's border czar could possibly deport. During his election campaign, Trump had pledged to end the temporary protected status that allows workers from select countries to come to the United States for work. According to experts, the consequences of such a move will be felt in most sectors. I'm talking about construction, housing, agriculture. Let's just take a step back and consider what's at stake here. As I mentioned, we're talking about millions of people who risk losing jobs. And this is just the undocumented migrant populace that we're talking about. The first group likely to be targeted are those considered to be threats, possibly those who entered the United States illegally as part of outgoing President Joe Biden's programs. Let me reiterate, those who entered legally under Joe Biden's programs. That is reportedly more than 1.3 million immigrants. The second group likely to be targeted includes Chinese men deemed to be of military age and have been living illegally in the United States. The third group could include convicted criminals who are in the United States illegally. To know how all of this will be implemented and unfold, we'll have to wait and watch for what happens on the 20th of January. Let's shift our focus now. The Indian Navy is poised to test a long-range anti-ship ballistic missile, a weapon that could strike enemy targets nearly 1,000 kilometers away. As per reports, this missile is being developed specifically to expand the Indian Navy's ability to neutralize the enemy from staggering distances, striking targets ranging from a warship, aircraft carrier to a naval base. Let's just pause for a moment and understand what this potentially means. Imagine the power of launching a rocket from a naval base, say in Mumbai, and hitting a target as far as Karachi, that's located nearly 900 kilometers away. Because this is exactly the strategic edge India is aiming to achieve. As per reports, the Defence Research and Development Organization, DRDO, is set to conduct this test on India's eastern coast in the coming days. This missile can be launched from both naval ships and land-based locations, making it flexible, formidable. While specific details about this missile remain confidential, reports indicate it's designed to bolster India's ability to deter regional threats. So let's be clear about what this new weapon means. With this anti-ship ballistic missile, India's Navy gains the power to engage enemy vessels well beyond the conventional range, establishing a new frontier of maritime deterrence. And this isn't an isolated move either. You see, it's part of a much broader shift. India's military, it's steadily growing its arsenal of ballistic missiles, with the Pralay ballistic missiles now being produced for both the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. These short and medium-range missiles are designed to ensure that India can endure and sustain conflicts, providing offensive capabilities to counter threats from its rivals. And India is not just stopping there. India is aiming to form a dedicated rocket force to strengthen the country's medium-range strike potential, a necessity as China and Pakistan already possess such capabilities. This emerging rocket force would offer India the strategic depth needed to defend its borders and project power beyond them. For example, the Pralay missiles, which are expected to enter operational service soon, they can carry a range of 150 to 500 kilometers and are built with advanced solid propellant rocket technology, giving them the speed and accuracy that modern warfare demands. Let's also remember that India isn't just expanding its ballistic missile capabilities, it's pushing the boundaries of technology with hypersonic missiles. DRDO is also reportedly working on developing hypersonic weapons for the armed forces. These hypersonic missiles could provide India a distinct advantage in both offensive and defensive scenarios, further enhancing the country's missile arsenal. Meanwhile, India's efforts are also garnering international attention. As per reports, recently, a top French military official expressed interest in India's Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher system. Developed by DRDO, the Pinaka rocket launchers can hit targets up to 75 kilometers away, reportedly with pinpoint accuracy. This system is also being exported, with Armenia placing an order and several other countries reportedly showing interest. These developments represent a new era for India's defense strategy. With anti-ship ballistic missiles, hypersonic weapons, and a dedicated rocket force, India is sending a clear message to the world. It is prepared to protect its interests, its borders, and its allies. As India prepares to conduct this test, one thing is certain, the stakes just got higher. Let's shift our focus now. As Moscow escalates its drone assault to new extremes, Ukraine faces unrelenting bombardment, with civilians caught between fear and fatigue. Our next story explains how, with a possible shift in US leadership, Kyiv's support from Washington stands on unsteady ground. Take a look.
Drones swarm Ukrainian skies. Air raid sirens scream into the night. Ukraine faces one of the most intense bombardments yet from Russia. Russia unleashed its most ferocious attack yet, sending a staggering 145 drones into Ukrainian skies in a single night. Air alerts blared as explosions ripped through cities, leaving residents of Kharkiv, Zaporizhia and Odessa scrambling for shelter. For residents of Kyiv, the last 2 months have been marked by sleepless nights, with some seeking shelter inside metro stations. Besides drones and missiles, Russian glide bombs are breaching Ukrainian air defenses, causing death and destruction. Russia has also unleashed a new deadlier version of the glide bombs. The rocket-boosted Grom E-1 flies as far as 120 kilometers, carrying about 600 kilograms of explosives. The scale of attacks has left Ukrainians questioning just how much more they can endure.
How was it? It was scary. I heard the sound of the drone. Then the sound faded and then it hit this house. I was thrown to the ground with a blast wave. It was all in a mere second.
For the fourth night in a row, the enemy targets our city. There were several Shahid drones. You all know and see what's going on today. Luckily, there are no victims, but there are injured people. There are many damaged residences and apartments. Private houses were destroyed. People have to be on the streets now.
The massive Russian drone attack came after Kyiv unleashed 34 drones towards Moscow, the largest attempted strike on the Russian capital since the war began. Russian ground forces are also pressing forward, claiming fresh territory in Donetsk while striking crucial Ukrainian facilities, from electronic warfare centers to drone factories. Despite Ukraine's defense efforts, its military units are growing increasingly stretched along the extensive front lines. The looming prospect of a Trump return to the White House has cast a shadow over Kyiv's support from Washington, which has been vital for its survival. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that any easing of US resolve against Russia could embolden Moscow, leading to heightened aggression and threatening Ukraine's position in the war. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
What were you doing when you were 3 years old? Getting ready for preschool, learning how to read? In fact, I'm sure most of us don't even remember, but an Indian already has the world at his feet. Meet Anish Sarar from Kolkata, the youngest rated chess player in the world. We're used to seeing teen prodigies in chess, and India has a host of youngsters making their name in the sport. But here's a child who hasn't even started school yet and is already making waves in the world of chess. To give you some perspective, little Anish was born in January 2021, which means he wasn't even alive during the first wave of the COVID pandemic. And to even reach the chess board, Anish has to sit on a stack of 3 plastic chairs at his training school in Kolkata. Let's tell you about his journey so far. After taking a liking towards the game, Anish learnt the rules by watching YouTube videos, and in March this year, his parents enrolled him in the Barua Academy in Kolkata. Within a matter of months, Anish was playing in competitive tournaments. Anish made his debut at the West Bengal State Under-9 tournament. He secured a score of 5.5 out of 8 points, finished 24th, defeating 2 rated opponents in the process. Anish followed that up by playing in the Under-13 state event, thereby fulfilling the minimum requirement of facing 5 rated players to earn a wide rating. This is the official ranking system that's sanctioned by the world governing body of chess. His current rating stands at 1,555. Anish has naturally caught the eye of the best in the world. He even played India's top-ranked player and world number 4, Arjun Erigaisi, in an exhibition. He is in good hands as well, being coached by Dibyendu Barua, who was India's second grandmaster. Judging by his rapid progress, Barua might have to order a few more high chairs soon. Anish isn't even aware of his historic feat actually, but that only makes his achievement all the more special. Among 190,000 active rated players, he's the youngest and is a full 10 months ahead of the second youngest in the rankings. This year has already been a landmark one for India in chess. In just a matter of a couple of months, India can have its second world champion if D. Gukesh wins the Showpiece series. But given the rise of talents like Anish, the time isn't far when Vishwanathan Anand will no longer be India's only chess world champion. He may just be one of many. Let's shift our focus now. Sri Lankan President Anurag Kumara Disanayake's JVP party, it's had a history of opposing the rights of Tamil minorities. Now, just 2 months after assuming office, the president has begun his outreach to the island nation's Tamil minority community, and he has made some tall promises. Here's a report.
Sri Lanka's President Anurag Kumara Disanayake has been campaigning in the island nation's northern region. This is the final leg of campaigning, ahead of Sri Lanka's parliamentary polls that are scheduled for this week in Jaffna. The new president received an enthusiastic reception. This was his first public meeting in Jaffna, a region dominated by the Tamil minority community. Interestingly, Disanayake's JVP party has not been one to support Tamil rights in the past. However, expectations are high from this young president. And the president too is playing to the gallery. The Tamil minority in the northern and eastern regions are the disadvantaged section of Sri Lanka's population. They've been the hardest hit by the decades-long civil war, the genocide that followed, and the subsequent poverty and unemployment crisis. Disanayake has been able to strike a chord with the Sri Lankan Tamils. He's done that by accusing Indian fishermen from Tamil Nadu of illegally fishing in Lankan waters. Not just that, President Disanayake has also accused Indian fishermen of destroying the marine resources of Sri Lanka. He has also promised to stop what he describes exploitation of marine resources. His other promises include protecting the rights of Lankan fishermen, more jobs for the people, support for agriculture and fisheries, and a crackdown on drug abuse. But perhaps the icing on the cake were the 2 big promises Disanayake made to Tamils during his Jaffna rally. One, that he will take steps that would return land still occupied by the Lankan government, especially the military, to its rightful owners. He will release political prisoners still lodged in prisons. As expected, the president received a resounding applause from the crowd after he made the announcement. But not all share the same enthusiasm. In fact, the Tamil community has mixed views about Disanayake. While a large number of people admire the new president for his anti-corruption stance, there are many who are apprehensive. They remember that Disanayake's party was a silent spectator when Sri Lanka's Tamil community faced their worst years, and so they remain cautious.
President Disanayake's promise of handing over land to its rightful owners in the north is not a new promise to those living in the north, especially after this promise was made on numerous occasions under various sitting presidents in the past. It will also be interesting to see, especially after parliamentary polls, what President Islamica's government will intend to do with regard to these land matters, especially in the north. Reporting for WION World at 1 from Colombo, I'm Lasmia Thauder.
Iran and Saudi Arabia, two regional powerhouses in West Asia with a history steeped in rivalry, religious divides and geopolitical standoffs, are now discussing ways to enhance defense and military cooperation. The two nations, who for decades have been adversaries, even backing opposing factions in regional wars, are reportedly taking steps towards military cooperation. As per reports, in a rare meeting in Tehran on Sunday, the chief of staff of both countries, Iran's Major General Mohammad Bagheri, sat down with Saudi Arabia's Lieutenant General Fayed bin Hamad Al Ruwaili. According to a report in Al Jazeera, the development of defense diplomacy and the expansion of bilateral cooperation were among the main topics of this meeting. And following the meeting, Iran's chief of staff reportedly, quote-unquote, welcomed the participation of the Saudi Arabian Navy in next year's Iranian naval exercise, either as observers or by sending naval units. The two generals, they've also discussed a range of issues like improving cooperation in defense and sharing insights, experiences and resources in education and sports. Al-Ruwaili, the Saudi chief of staff, reportedly seconded these discussions, stating that the framework for collaboration between the countries has a strategic foundation. Reportedly highlighting the influence of the Beijing Agreement, a diplomatic breakthrough that was brokered by China in 2023 that restored diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The latest development, remember, comes less than a month since Iran and Saudi Arabia held joint naval exercise in the Sea of Oman along with other countries. So what does all of this mean? You see, as recently as a year ago, Saudi Arabia and Iran stood on opposite sides of nearly every regional issue. Saudi Arabia reportedly led a coalition against the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, and Iran was blamed for alleged attacks on Saudi oil facilities. But gradually, there's been a pivot in foreign policy and a broader desire for regional stability and a newfound willingness to engage directly. According to experts, this shift is not just about symbolism, it's about pragmatism. For Saudi Arabia, stability, it's now a core priority as it embarks on an ambitious economic transformation plan, seeking to diversify beyond oil. With the volatility that conflict brings, it's clear Riyadh is trying to cement its vision of a peaceful, economically prosperous kingdom, adding that this goal cannot be achieved without some form of understanding with Tehran. Meanwhile, experts said that Iran is likely keen to stabilize its own region to avoid draining resources on conflicts. Furthermore, Tehran wants to assert its regional influence without resorting to aggression, presenting itself as a stabilizing force instead of a disruptive one. Now, experts say that this partnership for Iran could mean fewer threats from its long-time adversary and a chance to refocus on its domestic issues. It's also important to see this development in its entirety. You see, Saudi Arabia and Iran's relationship was not only complex, just politically, but also due to religious differences. Saudi Arabia saw itself as the leader of Sunni Islam, while Iran positioned itself as a Shiite stronghold. Reportedly, the 1979 Iranian Revolution set the two on separate paths, with each vying for influence in West Asia. This religious division reportedly also fueled sectarian tensions, particularly in regions like Lebanon, Iraq, Bahrain. So the question remains, will both the countries be willing to overlook these religious divides? Or is this just a fleeting attempt at diplomacy, hindered by deep-rooted differences that prove too difficult to reconcile? Because this cooperation could perhaps lead to a domino effect in West Asian diplomacy, perhaps encouraging other rivals to reassess their relationships. As it stands, both nations stand to gain immensely from peace and cooperation. But history tells us that peace in West Asia, just like most parts of the world, is never a matter of certainty. And staying with news from West Asia, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is working from a basement. Yes, the Israeli Prime Minister has moved his daily operations to a fortified room in the basement of his office, according to Israeli media. Reportedly, the Israeli Prime Minister now largely avoids his upper floor office and instead spends most of his workday in the secured basement room. Security officials reportedly directed him to use this space due to its increased protection. They've also advised him against staying in known fixed locations. The tightened security follows an incident last October when a drone launched by Hezbollah exploded near Netanyahu's residence in Caesarea, reportedly shattering a bedroom window, causing further damage. As per reports, these security precautions from the Israeli Prime Minister aim to counter potential drone and other aerial threats. The security measures have reportedly been explained to visitors meeting Netanyahu in the basement due to the severity of the situation. As per reports, Netanyahu's new security setup, it has led to changes in government meetings, with some now being held in different locations. For instance, last month, on the 26th of October, Netanyahu's office released an image of the Prime Minister meeting with the then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and top Israeli Defense Force generals. And where did this meeting happen? In a bunker beneath the Kiryat military base in Tel Aviv. A bunker. Was this just a coincidence or a planned decision? Furthermore, these security adjustments have had personal impacts for the Israeli Prime Minister. Netanyahu's son's wedding, which was planned for the near future, it's been postponed due to the elevated threat level, and Netanyahu's legal matters could also face delays. Netanyahu is due to testify next month in a Jerusalem district court on 3 separate corruption cases, but reportedly the court's lack of fortified space may affect his attendance. Israeli media also stated on Monday that Netanyahu's legal team had filed a request with the Jerusalem District Court seeking to delay his testimony in his corruption trial for 2.5 months, claiming that a series of security incidents that occurred during the time that he had to prepare for the testimony made the task, quote-unquote, impossible. Back in late October, Israeli media reported a Hezbollah drone attack on Netanyahu's residence, as I mentioned. This announcement came shortly after Hezbollah's media relations officer, Mohammad Afif, claimed responsibility for the attack from Beirut's southern suburb, attributing it to the Islamic resistance in Lebanon. The attack reportedly took place on the 19th of October, damaging Netanyahu's property. On the day of the attack, the Israeli Prime Minister's office confirmed that Netanyahu and his wife, Sarah, were not present. As per reports, 3 drones were launched from Lebanon in this operation. 2 were reportedly intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defense system, while the 3rd drone managed to reach Netanyahu's residence, impacting a bedroom window, damaging the yard, causing other interior damage as well. All right. In Bangladesh, the party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has alleged that its activists were assaulted and not allowed to stage a rally in the capital Dhaka. Police arrested 10 protesters they described as conspirators and accused them of attempting to destabilize the country. Police said that the supporters of Awami League were arrested after following the former Prime Minister's orders to protest bearing placards of Donald Trump. The police accused them of trying to undermine relations with Washington. The protest came ahead of a proposed rally by Hasina's Awami League, but the gathering was barred by the interim government, which calls the group fascist. The anti-discrimination student movement, which played a key role in toppling Hasina's government, held a large gathering in Dhaka protesting against the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina. As some pro-Hasina supporters took to the streets on Sunday, scuffles broke out with student counter-protesters. Police said that an audio recording of Hasina circulating on social media had urged her supporters to protest on Sunday and to carry placards with Trump's picture and the US flags. Police said that the Awami League had not sought permission to hold a rally, while the press secretary to UNIS said Hasina's party was not allowed to march. This as Bangladesh's interim government has announced that it will seek Interpol assistance to track down fugitive leaders of Hasina's regime. The government is requesting a red notice for Hasina and other former officials accused of human rights abuses and crimes against humanity. These charges stem from allegations of mass detentions, extrajudicial killings and crackdowns that resulted in over 700 deaths during the recent unrest. Sheikh Hasina, who fled to India, has been summoned to appear in court on the 18th of November, and warrants have been issued for over 60 individuals connected to her administration as well. Shifting our focus to Pakistan, which has expanded its anti-militancy operations across its restive province of Balochistan. A decision that came after a suicide bomber targeted a crowded railway station in Quetta, killing 27 people. The decision was taken following a high-level meeting chaired by Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi to discuss Balochistan's security situation. The move aims to enhance security, tackle the escalating threat of militancy. Naqvi said that during the meeting it was decided that they would take decisive steps with full force to crush the terrorists and expand intelligence-based operations. He also said the federal government would provide all possible support to the Balochistan government to combat terrorism. Measures reportedly include providing training and strengthening the professional capabilities of the police, counter-terrorism department and other forces of Balochistan. The question is, will it work? You see, Pakistan has been battling insurgency in Balochistan for decades. The Baloch Liberation Army, BLA, which claimed responsibility for the attack, is part of the insurgency. The BLA seeks independence for Balochistan, which is a province of about 15 million people. It borders Afghanistan to the north and Iran to the west. BLA is the biggest of several ethnic insurgent groups battling the Pakistani government for decades. They've accused the Pakistan government of unfairly appropriating Balochistan's rich gas and mineral reserves. On top of that, severe economic deprivation. It's only compounded these grievances. Remember, Balochistan is the largest and least populated of Pakistan's provinces, but it's also the most impoverished. An estimated 70% of its population are categorized as multidimensionally poor. While the Pakistani government has claimed that the Baloch insurgency and its leadership are significantly weakened, the scale of these attacks suggests otherwise. Not only do they point to an insurgency that appears to be far from over, they also suggest that the insurgency is being led by a robust and sophisticated militant organization. The terror attacks have also prompted concern about the risk posed to major infrastructure projects in Balochistan, including, and most importantly, the development of the Indian Ocean Port of Gwadar, which is part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC. Such projects are targets of Baloch resentment. In recent years, attacks against these projects and its funder, China, has increased. Almost a dozen Chinese nationals have been killed by Baloch militants in Balochistan and elsewhere in Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistani government has leveled allegations against the Taliban government in neighboring Afghanistan for fueling militant violence through its support for the Pakistani Taliban, TTP, and its allies, including the BLA. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's government has promised to take stern action, but so far there has been no indication that the government is willing to address the real problem, which is addressing the Baloch grievances that have fueled political alienation in the first place. This too raises concerns that Pakistan's powerful military establishment will use a heavy-handed response to deal with what is widely judged to be a political crisis, to press ahead with a militarized security approach to address the crisis in Balochistan. It only shows that lessons from the past have not been learned. Ultimately, we keep coming back to the same question when it comes to Pakistan. Can brute force truly tackle Pakistan's real problems? All right, and after a memorable 9-year journey, India's Vistara, a premium airline known for its standout service, will say its final goodbye on the 11th of November, marking the end of an era for frequent flyers who have come to love its distinct brand. But the company assures this isn't goodbye to quality flying. Instead, it claims it's the dawn of a new chapter as Tata merges Vistara's operations under the iconic Air India banner. Starting the 12th of November, all Vistara flights will operate as Air India flights, a move Tata believes will position the brand as a leader in global aviation. The merger is part of Tata Group's ambitious strategy to unify its aviation brands, streamline operations and deliver an elevated flying experience across its network. Tata first launched Vistara as a joint venture with Singapore Airlines in 2015, and now with this merger, Singapore Airlines will retain a 25.1% stake in Air India. This partnership, backed by Tata's investment and vision, aims to redefine Air India as a formidable international carrier capable of competing with the world's best. For loyal Vistara passengers, Tata has ensured that the merger will preserve the in-flight experience they love. The former Vistara planes will operate with Air India's special 4-digit codes starting with AI2, while the familiar crew and premium services, including Vistara's signature in-flight meals, will continue. This merger is the latest step in Tata's decades-long journey in Indian aviation. From the pioneering days of Tata Airlines in 1932 through nationalization in 1953 and finally to regaining Air India in 2021, Tata has remained committed to ruling the skies. The consolidation of Vistara and Air India further solidifies Tata's influence, marking a new phase for both Indian aviation and Tata's ambitions for global expansion. And India's fuel exports to the European Union surged by 58% in the first 3 quarters of 2024, largely powered by refined Russian crude oil. This increase aligns with the significant rise in India's imports of discounted Russian oil, which accounts for nearly 40% of India's total crude purchases. Since sanctions on Russian oil imports by the EU and G7 were introduced, India's role as a major refining hub has expanded. The country has met Europe's diesel demand while sidestepping direct restrictions on Russian crude itself. According to the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air, India is now the EU's top supplier of oil products, surpassing pre-war import levels by nearly double. Indian refineries, heavily reliant on Russian crude, contributed to this export surge. From December 2022, EU countries and other price cap nations imposed a $60 per barrel limit on Russian oil, aiming to curb the Kremlin's revenues. However, the price cap does not apply to refined fuel produced from Russian crude, which are being exported to Europe at full price. CREA reports that India's exports derived from Russian oil have totaled over $7.7 billion since the cap's implementation, with shadow fleets transporting over 80% of Russian crude to circumvent the sanctions. Meanwhile, Indian refineries using this discounted crude have become essential to Europe's fuel supply. Diesel and jet fuel imports from India reached 154,000 barrels a day. That's double the amount before Russia's Ukraine invasion. And this reliance has raised questions about the efficacy of sanctions as Russian revenues indirectly grow through third-party refiners and complex supply chains. All right, in the latest developments in drone innovation, Chinese researchers have created a wearable touchpad that lets users control drones with simple finger swipes. The touchpad instantly detects swipe patterns and transmits commands to a drone via Bluetooth transmitter to create a smooth and responsive interaction. It's designed to meet the demand for compact and advanced human-machine interfaces. The touchpad tech for drones offers a major step forward in remote control technology. So how does it work? The touchpad is skin-like, similar to a band-aid, with a layered design that generates a voltage signal when touched. It can detect complex swiping gestures and can distinguish variations in strength, speed, and position with an accuracy of 96.8%. The scientists say one of its standout features is resilience in cold temperatures due to an anti-freeze hydrogel that allows it to function even at minus 23 degrees Celsius. This stretchable touchpad technology holds promise for various applications that include controlling drones in harsh environments, managing IoT devices in smart homes, and even supporting remote healthcare. All right, let's shift our focus. Red wine may be good for you. As per scientists, a compound found in red wine could hold the key to preventing bowel cancer. However, a trial launched this week is yet to assess whether a low dose of the said chemical, also found in grapes, red grapes particularly, blueberries and peanuts, could actually slow the growth of tumor cells. Let's get you more details on this. Resveratrol, an antioxidant in red grapes, may have potential health benefits, including a cure for cancer. The study, which is one of the largest to-date testing drugs for cancer prevention, it seeks to recruit patients who are at risk of the disease. What's more, this unique experiment builds on more than a decade of work by Professor Karen Brown, a cancer researcher at the University of Leicester and the trial's lead investigator. But what's been her breakthrough, you ask? Well, Brown is credited with finding that purified resveratrol can slow tumor growth in mice and can reach the bowel undigested. Let me tell you how this goes. The trial recruits people aged between 50 and 73 who have been screened with having bowel polyps. These are small growths which may later develop into cancer if they are left untreated. So, as part of the main trial, patients will have their polyps removed and will be given either aspirin itself or a combination of aspirin and metformin. That's a diabetes drug. This daily for 3 years, and as part of a sub-study, others will take purified resveratrol or a placebo for just 1 year. Just to be clear here, drinking red wine does not actually prevent cancer. In fact, alcohol is a known cause for cancer, and this study only serves as a concerted effort to clinically test if drugs can stop the spread of this cancer right in the early stages. However, Brown, who is the chief of the trial, suggests nothing beats a healthy and well-balanced lifestyle in preventing bowel cancer. This includes curbing smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, cutting down on alcohol, reducing red and processed meat consumption. Remember, bowel cancer, it's the 4th most common cancer in the UK, with an estimated 44,000 people getting diagnosed each year. It is also the 2nd most common cause of cancer death. Moving on, 43 monkeys escaped from a research facility in South Carolina on the 6th of November, leaving authorities and residents of the area on high alert. According to the officials, 24 monkeys have been recaptured. With this, more than half of the monkeys bred for medical research that escaped from the compound of research have been recovered unharmed. But of course, a sizable group remains active along the compound's fence line. The breakout occurred at Alpha Genesis, that's a primate breeding company in Low Country, when a new employee reportedly failed to secure an enclosure properly. Authorities said that the monkeys which escaped were not part of any testing, though authorities assure that residents are not at risk. The escape, of course, has stirred local concerns. Macaques are known to be unpredictable and even aggressive, especially when scared. For Alpha Genesis, which faced similar escapes in 2016 and 2014, this incident raised troubling questions about security at the facility. Some locals wonder, is their neighborhood safe from recurring primate jailbreaks? And Canada, it's reported its first human case of H5 bird flu. A teenager from British Columbia has tested positive and is undergoing treatment. The case of bird flu has drawn attention on transmission of bird flu to humans. Canadian authorities, they're also investigating the source of the infection and who the teenager recently came in contact with. Health officials say the teenager likely contracted the virus from a bird or an animal. While there's no evidence of person-to-person spread so far, scientists warn that if it were to happen, a pandemic would unfold. Now, trying to assuage fears, Canada's Health Minister Mark Holland has claimed that while the risk to public is low, the government is taking immediate action to contain the outbreak. So what is the H5 bird flu? It's a subtype of the avian influenza like H5N1, H5N2, H5N6 or H5N9 strains. It's most commonly found in wild birds and poultry, causing high mortality with the potential for transmission to humans. It can cause pneumonia, acute respiratory distress and multi-organ failure. As per reports, humans can contract bird flu if they come in close contact with infected animal or birds. According to the CDC, humans can also get infected if they inhale the virus in droplets or dust form the infected animals or touch a contaminated surface. This year, there was an outbreak in cattle in the United States, with over 450 dairy farms in 15 states getting infected since March. In September, officials also said a person in Missouri became the first in the United States to test positive for bird flu without known exposure to infected animals. According to CDC, 46 people have tested positive in the United States. Scientists fear a high rate of transmission could facilitate a mutation of the virus. World Health Organization has also warned of the potential to spread among humans. And with that, we call it a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thank you so much for tuning in.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Congolese political and civil society leaders announced National Awakening Alliance to rally against constitutional changes that are meant to ensure President Felix Tshisekedi keeps power indefinitely, terming it high treason. Southern African development community scrambles for solutions to the crisis that is already having ripple effects on regional economies that rely on Mozambican ports for cargo movements. And in Ivory Coast, the popularity of leke sandals, the plastic footwear also known as jelly shoes or jellies, rises tremendously. That's this week on World of Africa, at these times on WION. World is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership,
We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
Hello there, this is WION World is One. We are glad you're watching. Time now for Pulse. I'm Eric Njoka. Our top stories. Russia denies a reported call between President Vladimir Putin and US President-elect Donald Trump on the Ukraine war. Moscow says the West showed no signs for talks. The Russian Defense Ministry shows the first joint naval drills with the Indonesian Navy in the Java Sea. Several Russian ships from its Pacific Fleet took part in the drills. Iran's vice president, speaking at a summit with Arab leaders in Riyadh, says that the world is waiting for Donald Trump to end the wars with Hamas and Hezbollah. The COP29 climate talks stall shortly after opening as countries fight over the agenda for the crunch discussions that come days after Donald Trump was re-elected president of the US.